Welcome to another CEO Wisdom podcast. We have Amy Gidon with us today. She is CEO and co-founder at Daily Aloha. We're going to talk about putting empathy gently back into muscle memory, which is an interesting topic. This podcast is presented by podpar.com. That's my podcasting company. If you want to start, scale, be invited to podcasts like this one, you can go to podpar.com. Podcasts are great to generate clients, to generate a community, and everything in between. Amy, welcome to the pod. Can you tell us a bit more about yourself and about Daily Aloha?
Yeah, thank you. So good to be here. So we are the slowest startup ever. we actually launched our mobile app in 2019, but I started dreaming about it in 2016. I was fully engaged in other work, but with the division and polarization and dehumanization that came on the heels of that in the lead up to our federal election in 2016, I just started feeling like there needs to be something healing in the world. And I got the crazy idea that I should do something of healing. And I had this really transformative moment in a subway station in New York City. And it set me on this course of deep exploration of participatory public art. And believe it or not, that led to a mobile app.
Interesting. Do you feel that we're still recovering from the trauma that was getting Trump elected in 2016?
Yes. I mean, there's been trauma on trauma, right? There was the election of 2016. There was the election of 2020. There was COVID, a pandemic. There was a heightened awareness of social injustice with George Floyd and other, incidents here in the States and around the world. So we're in it. We're still in the thick of it. And if you had asked me back in 2016 if the world would still feel the same way to me, this number of years later, I would have said absolutely not. This has got to be just a blip. But it's not. I think it's this is a big topic, but I feel like it's the heaving of disrupted systems that are ultimately going to be forever changed. It might take a few more decades, but we're in the thick of it, and we're going to be for a little while yet. But I'm hopeful. I know that sounds like gloom and doom. I feel like this is a necessary transformation into something better.
In the 2020 election, where was the trauma in this? Because Biden looks, he didn't shock anyone. Biden, he's not the controversial character that misrepresents or misuses science, or just make boisterous claims pretty much all the time. So where was the trauma in the 2020 election?
Yeah, the trauma from my point of view, and there's a lot more politically savvy people than I, but the trauma, I would say, in two ways. One is that it showed us that we're still such a divided people, and there's no one measure of truth, and that nobody has been able to listen to anyone who doesn't think, believe, act like they do. So the division and polarization was even, I think, more heightened than in 2016. And then, of course, the election results were questioned, and we had the January 6th, storming of the Capitol, and it was trauma to our democracy, right? So if election results are called into question like that, it made me feel sort of unsafe in a democratic sense. So yeah, I think that was really traumatic.
And again, I think we could point the finger at this man with yellow hair, but I mean, it's more complex than that. But he did introduce that chaos, that populism that just blurs the facts, and we don't know what's reality anymore, especially when you're mentally susceptible to that. That's the danger of electing someone that is there for their own sake. And that happens a lot. That did happen a lot historically. So I feel it's deeper than that. If we go with the five whys, it's not just Trump. Trump is just the face of it. For example, I do think that Trump has matured a little bit since the time he took in office, but still it was a big error to elect him. Conspiracy theorists could possibly point at other countries manipulating that, and if it would be so, it would be a master play from these other countries. But yeah, I think there's still some recovery from that event, and yeah, the Capitol events were really weird and odd, and it showed a lot of instability, and it just shows the lack of maturity at the top. How this leader made you guys look. It made US look really unstable. And then to double down on that, media, US is the land of media, and the rest of the world is also picking back on that, but it just media amplifies drama and makes everything look so much worse than they are. So yes, that was pretty bad indeed. You can sense from my talking that, yeah, my empathy levels are not too high. Just say things as they aren't. I think that can also be some kind of an advantage because I value quite honesty. What is the equilibrium between empathy and honesty / saying things as they are? Because me, I tend to value quite a lot the truth and the honesty and saying things as they are. I don't want to hurt people, but I want to tell the facts. And even if I may hurt in saying someone these things, they will get to know me and know that I have good intentions and potentially get insights from this truth. So I think some people stand in the middle or 80% in there. Me, I go 100% truth. So I think that can be valuable to the whole ecosystem. So where should I stand with honesty and empathy?
It's a really interesting question. I don't see them on the same spectrum at all. I think you can be completely empathic and have an empathetic response and be honest. So let me describe that a little more. So I'm curious what your definition of empathy is. I'll tell you how I've come to understand it. And then maybe you could share too. So let's start with compassion. Compassion's sort of easy to understand, and it's related to empathy. Compassion, and I just came from the Compassion Conference in San Francisco last week, so it's very, vivid in my mind. Compassion is taking an action to alleviate the suffering of another, right? It's an act, right, to alleviate the suffering of another. Empathy is often like the predecessor to that. Because first of all, I have to care about your suffering, and I even have to recognize your suffering. So empathy is being able to understand the feelings of another. And it requires like an act of imagination because I'm not you. I don't know you very well. So I can only imagine how you might feel in response to a particular thing. Right. So one level of empathy is to say, if I was you, I would feel this way. But that's not really empathy because I'm not you. So it's like this leap of imagination. From what I know about you, I can imagine that you might be feeling this certain way. And those feelings affect me. They actually affect my feelings because there's a certain amount of caring for you as a human. So that's empathy. Okay, where does honesty come in then, right? So I might imagine you're feeling a certain way, and now I have an opportunity to react to that or not react. I can do something with that or choose not to do something with that. So maybe this is where your thinking honesty might come in. So I might imagine that you're feeling distressed about something. Now I could say to you, oh, you shouldn't feel distressed. It's not so bad. Or I could say to you, wow, like, yeah, that thing kind of sucked. And of course you're going to feel this way. Or I could say to you, get over yourself. This might be what you're thinking about being honest. Like, yeah, that thing happened and you can feel that way, but that's not productive. And, there's all these other things you should consider. You shouldn't feel that way. You should do this, right? And that might be a more like honest reaction. That might be a little bit of how I feel, but I don't think that's a compassionate response. So I think when it comes to honesty and empathy, first of all, it's the ability to really recognize how you might be feeling given all the circumstances and what I know about you. And then there's my response, and that's where compassion comes in. I don't think it's ever helpful to be deceitful, to lie, to bend the truth, all those things, right? So I think we can easily set those aside. I think what you're raising is how direct might one be? And I think that it's important to be direct and compassionate. And I think you can do both, right? And I think a lot of that is acknowledgement. Hey, like, I see you, I hear you. What I understand about you is this. I can validate you, I can acknowledge that, and I can be honest about my reaction and in a compassionate way. So I think all of that can live together.
Interesting. Yeah, I think it's important to know one's role in society, because for listening and so forth, I believe the spouse may have that role, empathizing, quote unquote, then psychotherapists, coaches, and I think, well, in my world, and I think in the scientific world, one action is worth like probably 100 empathy tokens. I think a lot of people, they get addicted to that understanding of, oh, it's, yeah, not for you. By the way, I think there's a lot of people that are surfing on the dangerous wave of pity. When it comes to empathy, it's like poor you, you know. And I also think it's dangerous to try to project one's brain to the other. If I would, you know, I would have zero empathy, because I don't have much empathy. For me, it's like pure action, you know, and I'm really happy with my life. And I just know that if I put action stoic style, you know, like stuff is gonna resolve. I'm capable of being nice, you know. I think there's like a lot of value in being nice and positive and transferring energy. But to me, the golden rule, like what applies to me applies to you, that's like not gonna work. I can try to also estimate or try to think of one's reality with all the data points that I have in, but humans are so complex usually, which is why I try to go with actions. But for example, right, I called Trump yellow hair. That's making fun of him. Am I entitled to do that? I know that Trump can take it, you know, like he's a strong individual, mentally speaking, and he's used to that. But I mean, that's not nice, you know. Is it because he did something to me? Well, yeah, he in my opinion, he did put the world in a bad state, you know, and according to many. But yeah, it's not only him. So I have, yeah, it's a complex topic. I just, as usual, I think that technology and some form of AGI that would like scrape everything on Amy Gidon and tell me like what to say to Amy could be interesting. But then I think I'd sacrifice a part of myself. So I think some broad calculus should be made of, oh, is Charles' role to be honest, like not to hurt people. I think a lot of people, they take honesty as a shield, you know, to just blast people off just because it feels good and they're toxic. I don't think it's my case here, but I do think that if I come up with an action plan, I think that first that has a positive psychological effect to people. It's like, oh shit, we have a plan now. So we're not focusing on the negative anymore, you know, on the poor you side of things. And then if they act upon that almost immediately, which is hard, by the way, I think they can be better off. So what do you feel about that philosophy? Because now I'm also talking like from a CEO and founder perspective, which is like most my audience. I wouldn't be talking of someone that had a deep depression that was raped at 3 years old. I mean, that would be a totally different conversation, right? These are deep wounds and would require a different kind of empathy, I guess.
Yeah. I like that you brought up action, right? So I think you're also maybe painting a false spectrum of empathy and action, right? And they're not opposed at all. Taking action is really important, right? So like as a founder myself, like it's been all about action. And I think a lot about empathy as a leadership skill, right? So let's talk about that, because I think that's where action comes in. So having a plan and taking action in order to make progress or even to address distress is critically important. I don't think anybody wants to wallow in negative feelings, and pity doesn't get anybody very far, right? So on an interpersonal level, if you recognize that someone is suffering or feeling distress, it's an attunement to know what is called for in that moment. And you mentioned a spouse. Like in some relationships, it might just be to sit with that person and bear witness to where they are. But in a work setting, that's really not what we look at our work relationships for. That might be a momentary like acknowledgement, and then it's like, okay, how are we gonna move away? What are we gonna move toward? And a strong leader has an action plan. They move away from something negative and towards something positive. And also in a work setting, people want to feel purposeful. They want to know they're making a contribution. They want to feel connected to whatever the mission is of that organization or the plan is for that organization. So it's not empathic or compassionate for a leader to not have a plan. It's almost like the opposite, because people want to feel like they matter, like they know what's happening, like they can make a contribution, and they're making progress. That makes people feel good, uplifted, like they're there for a reason. So having a strong vision, having a strong plan, helping everybody to feel like part of that plan, that everybody knows how very specifically they can make a contribution. I would argue that is empathic and considerate and compassionate, because people want to feel purposeful in that way.
Right. Yeah, I agree with touch of empathy as openers, which is like ease. I believe in the biochemistry theory of everything. So it's how people feel, right? And if you start a conversation with empathy and understanding, hey, I've been there, or try at least to do that, or try to find an example in your own life that relates to that, that can start a conversation well. I think, yeah, the work context is more rigid and somewhat time limited. So you can start with that and then focus on the action plan and then get to action as quick as possible. Well, coach or psychotherapy or a partner could be way longer conversations depending on the methodology at use. So is it like deep psychoanalysis and finding out the why, the problem, and then focusing on some course of action. So yeah, I just in my own personal life, I feel that, yeah, like me, I try to go fast track on the emotional healing level. Coaches are good. I have various of them, but psychedelics usually get me there in like a couple minutes. And yeah, I can get in deep meditations and like instantly and so forth. So, and I can heal a lot under these. That's my personal findings. But yeah, like doing some therapies on myself, like journaling and all of that. I found that just focusing on the course of action just solves the problem. And yeah, I can kiss them goodbye and don't have to deal with them ever again because they're solved. I get what you're saying. Now, Daily Aloha, how are you trying to fix that problem with that app? Tell me a bit more about it.
Yeah. I think of the connection between our app and empathy building is that we're like training wheels for empathy. It's not hitting you in the face. I hope that it's a little bit of a reverberation after using the app. So the app is like a 2-minute daily ritual of collective reflection on a question every day. So every day there's a new question. It's in the fill in the blank format, and there's 3 steps to the daily ritual. One is just for you, for everyone to reflect on the daily question, right? To think about it, answer it. It's sort of, you said you're a journaler, right? It's almost like a little bit of a journal entry, like a journal prompt. So you answer the question, you give it a mood. So it's also a little practice in like just kind of assessing where you are and what it feels like in your body. And you give it a mood, and that's your personal aloha. It's your response and your mood. And then the second step is that you send it off, and it gets delivered randomly and anonymously to one other person in the network. Our public app we call the Alohaverse. So it gets delivered to one other person and around the world. And then you instantly get one back from someone else. And to the one that you receive, you send them a sticker. And that sticker, we have a bunch of stickers. It kind of acknowledges to that person that they were seen and heard by another human on the planet. And then the third step is we call it the Aloha Wall, where all the answers accumulate all day long. And there's more bells and whistles, but that's the core daily ritual. And those 3 steps are the underpinnings or the foundation for empathy, right? The first step is just my own self-awareness, right? And empathy really starts with the self-awareness, self-love, self-compassion. The second step is about reciprocity and mutuality, seeing and being seen by another person. And then the third step, seeing all the answers, is about perspective taking or perspective getting, right? Kind of understanding the range of responses that you might see to that same question that you thought about. You might see answers like your own and you feel less alone. You might see answers that are quite different and you're like, there's a lot of people out there who have a different take on this, a different set of life experiences that led them to answer differently. So those 3 steps are really the foundation for empathy, but it's a very fun app. It's fun, it's quick, it's light, it's airy. So it's not, it's a very light touch, but the hope is that if you use it every day, it's going to maybe change the way you consider yourself and other people.
Why did you decide to start that app? Because you're in New York, the capital of cortisol, and you had the corporate career, also corporate cortisol that brings perfectly together. Bain, I see American Express, 2 companies that I love, by the way, studied both, very ambitious companies. You're a consultant, you had your own company. So what led you to come up with that app?
Yeah. I don't think ambition and empathy are opposed to each other either. Like I think all of these things are both and I was really lucky that the formative years of my career were with these like very admirable blue chip companies. I learned to be a leader there. And my leadership lessons are about business, but they're also about people. Like I deeply believe that being an effective leader requires that you care about people and care about your people, and that you create a culture where everybody can really excel and flourish and thrive because of ambition and performance. Like it's all true for me. And, later in my business career, I started focusing on women's leadership development. So I turned more into like the practice of leadership. And then with the election of 2016, I felt like what was happening felt like what I call moral injury, like an assault on my personal values. And my personal values are that everybody matters and everybody deserves to be seen and heard in their full humanness. And that was under assault. And I felt like I could do something about it. And I felt called to do something about it. So, yeah, it was a change from my business career, but I didn't turn away from anything. I turned into something. I turned into what matters most to me as a human and as a business leader. Again, I think all of those things coexist.
I really much relate to the moral assaults, not because it happened to me, because I've been an entrepreneur since day one, and I always decided to have my own decisions pretty much on everything, addicted to freedom. But I see various corporate folks, some of them that even come on this podcast, that I still see under moral assault, but they're not doing anything about it. Um, I ask questions to folks that work in oil and gas, for example, and I feel they still don't have like a clear response of like their ethics and their thoughts on the subject. You know, they just do it for one simple reason, and that's to feed their family. Um, and I mean, yeah, it's okay to feed your family, but there's probably better ways to do it. You know, that people are in fight or flight and they think that if they give up their job, it's going to be the end of the world. That's not the reality. Humans always find the solutions to pretty much everything. In corporate, it's especially prevalent. I consider corporate to have mastered the 9 to 5 contracts. You know, you can't talk about us, you're under NDA. So even that is like, to me, is weird to put someone under an NDA, you know, like to restrict the freedom of speech of someone, talking about the constitution and so forth. So do you feel that most people working in corporate are under that moral assault, and do you feel that most can go through a full career without realizing that?
Mm. No, the moral assault or moral injury that I felt had a little less to do with the corporate environment I was in at the time and more to do with what was happening socially and politically. So there's a lot of levels of feeling, you know, that sense of an assault to your values. But to your point about being in an environment where the environment itself requires that you act in opposition to your values, I think that's what you're bringing up. I mean, I know that I couldn't tolerate that. I also know that I have a lot of privilege. I have options that a lot of people don't have. So this is where empathy comes in. I'm not a coal miner in Appalachia who is barely making ends eat. I'm mining coal, which one might think is not environmentally sustainable, but it's what I was trained to do. It's the only job accessible to me, and I have a family to feed. Like, I get it. I get it. I mean, that's a terrible position to be in, to be doing work that is in opposition to your values. And if there are people that have little choice, and my heart goes out to them, because if you're choosing between alignment with your values and feeding your family, you're going to feed your damn family. Right. So the fact that I was able to choose to work in total alignment with what I value most as a human is a choice and a privilege and an opportunity that I had. So I feel really fortunate that I had it. Now, there's a lot of people in the middle, right, who have choices and they're not making a choice to live in alignment with their values, right? They're not the coal miner. They might be motivated by greed. They might be motivated by fear. I think a lot of people operate from a place of fear, and that keeps them trapped, but it takes a heavy human toll. You know, if you're working in a way that is an affront to your values, and you're making those trade-offs in daily life, it chips away at your soul. I mean, it's because you're trapped by greed or fear or some other thing, and it's going to come out one way or another. It's going to take a toll on you.
Fully agree with that. And yeah, a potential solution to that could be to use Aloha until you can figure out a plan, an exit plan out of corporate. Maybe start a business. You know, like freedom is, I think, undervalued by a lot of people, because freedom gives you space to think. A lot of people, they don't have space to think. You know, even having children, you need to have some kind of plan, or you need to have some established skill set to move forward on yeah, your action and your decisions, which in that case is having little humans to feed, you know, because these are your responsibilities, and justifying to do unethical actions or signing a contract with the devil is not justifiable by having children's, you know, because guess what, your children's will learn off that, you know, and they will push that onto the world. So if you're going to educate little humans, well, ideally they need to add value to that world. They need to be good people if they live in a society, that is. So Amy, thank you for coming on today. Where can people find out more about you?
Yeah, I'm always happy to connect on LinkedIn, Amy Gidon. And if you want to try out our lovely little daily practice, Daily Aloha, we're in the Apple App Store, Google Play Store. You can go right there and search for Daily Aloha. That's like Aloha with an H. Or you can go to our website, dailyaloha.com, and click on the links there.